All right, we're so excited to have Helen back for round two, and hopefully we're going to have her every month from here on out, just with all her wisdom. And today we're going to talk about something that I think everybody's going to be excited to hear about how to talk about money with our children or the children in our lives.
Yes.
So I think it's just a wonderful Helen, I think what you're going to talk about, though, really applies to everybody.
It does.
It might explain some of the issues that we have in our other relationships, kind of based on how we were introduced to money at our younger age. So I think it's going to be applicable to everybody.
You don't have to have children to understand this. In fact, if you were a child that was not allowed to know about budgets in your home, you've got some damage, and it probably comes through in the way you handle money. But it's not damage you can't fix. It's we all have damage, but that's just it. So,
well, I love your analogy about the spoiled tomatoes. So why don't we start there?
Ooh, that's a good
all right. Well, I am going to start with that. I want to tell y'all, though, that this is my disclaimer. I didn't do everything right. I didn't. But for some reason, I was given the gift of understanding that if you have 10 cents, you can only spend 9 cents. And most of the world doesn't go by that. But I do. And I knew I had to teach my children that for sure. And they are great with money. And I've told y'all that before. And it's not, they say, we grew up in a house where we talked about it. And it wasn't talking about it negatively. I want to get that across. Because the big line I love to say is you can tell somebody anything as long as it's the right way. And that's called letting your children in on your budget and what you're doing in your house. And if you're not doing it well, then that's the first thing you've got to fix before you can let your children in. But anyway, back to the spoiled tomato. I tell this story just about in any session I do, not for children, just in general. But I had a wonderful friend when we lived in England for 4 years who was extremely wealthy. At one point, her husband was the president of the French National Bank. And there's little old me in the coal business next to her. But she was a great friend of mine, still is. She had 4 children. They had so much money, they couldn't have counted it. And I noticed and noticed and noticed. And by the way, if you know someone who's doing a great job, copy them. Just what are you doing and how are you doing it? But I asked her that one day. I said, tell me what you're doing. Your children are so well-rounded. And I had noticed they didn't have a lot of toys. Now, did they have a gorgeous house? Yes, they went on fabulous trips, fabulous education, fabulous. And they all turned out great. And she looked at me and said, have you ever seen a spoiled tomato, a really spoiled tomato? And I said, actually, I have. And she said, well, picture the white, fuzzy stuff, the slime, the black. And she said, I really feel like even if you have money or you don't have money, how you present money to your children, you could actually make them into that spoiled tomato where no one wants to have a relationship with them. They don't know how to get out in the world and fight for what's working and what's right, because you will have always just pampered and buttered the place they're sitting. And I really got that. In fact, I get it today. I don't believe in it, and it really isn't that much to do with are you wealthy or are you not wealthy. It's a premise of mine. But so I've written some notes, and I guess the first thing I want to say is understand that if you talk about money, and one of my favorite lines is, you know what, we can't afford that. And people are so afraid to say that. Why? Why are they afraid to say that? Because it's the truth. So if you let your children in, we all know that we do better with parameters. We all know we do. So if you let your children in on that discussion, then there's peace in that. There's peace in the boundaries, if you will. And if you don't let them in on that, especially if you're having trouble, they will pick it up. They will pick it up. You don't think they will, but they will. Which segues into my new story that I've never told before, because a friend of mine just came to me and said, okay, Miss Fancy, you're out there talking about all this, and I want you to tell my story, which is so funny. Half my stories are people who come to me and said, please tell my story. Okay, so this is my new one. I have a great friend. She's extremely successful in her own business now, but this is her life. She grew up in a beautiful house in Birmingham, and her parents were happily married, blah, blah, blah. They actually went through 2 bankruptcies, her parents, and they never let my friend and her 2 siblings in on it. They always thought everything was great. They went on vacations. They had ice cream. She said the atmosphere in our house was always, there's nothing wrong. So fast forward, she marries, and she's since divorced after having 3 boys, but she married someone who was real fun and jovial. He couldn't hold down a job. He couldn't support them. They went into a bankruptcy, and she went into a spiral. And she came out saying, I love my parents. They did the best they could with the light they had, but they did not prepare us. So when the wheels started falling off in my life, I realized as a child, I was not given those tools at all. I didn't know how to handle if something went wrong. Well, of course things go wrong. I don't care if you're the wealthiest, most beautiful person in the world. The wheels are going to come off at some point. And she wasn't prepared. And she says, my parents, I love them. They did me a disservice. Now that's from somebody who actually lived it. And I think it's a valuable thing to talk about.
That's a good word.
Y'all have any questions, or do you want me just to mow through my notes?
We love you mowing through your notes because they're great and they're organized. I don't want to get in your way. Keep going.
Okay.
We'll set, there's a chat. Hey, Helen, there's a chat feature, and participants, I encourage you to use it. If you don't want to unmute and ask a question, use that little chat feature on the bottom, and then she can answer your questions as they come up.
Okay, I don't see a chat feature, but, oh, is it above my face?
Yeah, but you know what? I'll ask the questions because I can see it on my side. If there's one, I'll tell you.
Okay. All right, so I'm just going to start with the basics, which is think about your own home. Is it a structured, positive place? Or is it negative, fearful? Because when you don't have a handle on your money, and this gets back to people, I don't care if you have babies or zebras living in your house. If you don't have your money in order, it's stressful. It's negative. That's the first place to start. But if you have your ducks in a row, if you will, your children feel it and they know it. And my children, I've asked them point blank, did you ever feel like you didn't have enough? And they said, no. What we felt is that if you and Daddy bought a car, or we went on a vacation, or we renovated our Crescent house for the 4th time, which is a whole nother story. We knew that you had the money because you told us that. And if on spring break, when everybody was going to Vail or Austria, and we went to Mobile, you explained it. You said, you know what? It's not that we're not going on a trip. We're going on a fun trip. But we're not going to Vail or Austria. And why do you think we're not? And they would say, well, it's not the budget. I'm not sure they really understood that, but that was the reason. It wasn't in the budget. And we didn't spend money unless we had the money. There's the 10 cents, 9 cents rule. So remember to use the words, we can't afford it. And I tell you something, this is a bigger challenge to people who have a boatload of money, because you have to make a place for a child to understand, oh, okay, I'm not the center here. I am going to have to pull my own weight somewhere. Even if they have a giant trust fund they're going to have, are you going to raise them to have no tools? What if they marry a missionary? It's going to Japan. It happens. And they don't have any tools, like my friend who grew up, everything was great, and it really wasn't great. So if you're not giving your children those tools, you have done them a huge disservice, because you don't know what's going to happen in their life. You have no idea. And so before they leave your house at 18, you've got to teach a number of things, which I won't go into today, but I have a list of things you better teach them. So at this point, I want you to picture in your mind somebody that you know who is spoiled. We all have friends. I have 3 friends that I adore. They're spoiled, rotten, they're entitled. They stomp their feet. They still do this because they were never trained. But think about that. And so is that really what you want your children to be? Do you want them to be the one that everybody's, oh, here she goes again. No, you want them to understand, hey, if I have money or I don't have money, I have value and I need to participate. I'm not going to always be the center. I'm not going to always have everything I want. And if I do, I better know how to handle that, because a lot of people have everything they want go down the tubes. They don't make it. They don't have the tools. And guess what? That's on you. That's not on your child. That's on you. So I will not try to lecture too much.
Hey, Helen, I have a question for you. So let's
Sure.
say like we've seen the light and our child is 15 years old. Now what do we do?
Okay, I had a question. I told Emily yesterday, one of my favorite questions at one of the seminars I did was from a young man. He had an eighth grader. And I sort of got the feeling they might have a divorce going on, but he didn't say that. So, and actually the funny part of this is that it was a big crowd, but I saw Rhett, my son, and his wife Gunter in the back of the room. So they had come to hear me, and that was sweet. But so this man stands up and he says, I have this junior high person and I'm in trouble because every time she wants something, she beats me up until I give it to her, because I'm afraid she's not going to care for me if I don't do that. And one day later, it's not enough. So back up, he had just bought her an iPhone 2 months before. She liked it for a while. Now she was on him for an iPad. And he said, it is relentless. And I'm afraid not to give it to her, even though I can't really afford it. I'm working so hard out there to get my life started and my career. I really can't afford it, but I'm afraid not to give it to her. What do you think I should do? And I heard from the back of the room, oh boy, buddy, you about to get it. And it was Red. And I said, I'm going to try to say this nicely, but you're an idiot. And I called him an idiot in front of the entire group. And I said, I hope you hear that with a kind heart. But let's talk about it. I said, so you're raising this child to think she can whine and stammer and she will get her way with her father. And actually, I think her respect for you will be nil. She will not have had any parameters. And you're making it so that, okay, so that's the way she sees relationships. It's with her own father. So why wouldn't that be with her husband or her friends? As long as she whines enough, she's going to get what she wants. Oh, buddy. He said, well, I don't know what to do. I said, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. You go home and you man up and you face this eighth grader and say, sister, the gig's up. I have been an idiot. I am not your friend. I'm a friendly parent, but I am not your friend. So here's the deal. You want an iPad? You get your behind out there and do some chores, earn some money to put toward this. When you have $100, you come back and see me and we'll talk about it. But not until then, because sister, you're not the center of the world. And you don't get to have what you want because you whine. You get to have what you want because you have played a part in it and you've worked it out. And he wrote me an email 3 days later. I've kept it. It said, I can't thank you enough. My daughter dying to meet the mean woman who has changed her life. But he went, you were so right. I was afraid of her. And I'm not afraid of her anymore. I'm a parent. I am not her friend.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
That's so good. And I tell my kids, my oldest, she's 11 and she really wants an iPhone. And I just talk to her like this. There are multiple reasons why she doesn't have one. But, and she's very responsible. But I said, Lily, do you remember that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? I said, do you remember that one? It's a good
My
one.
favorite book.
I said, me too. I said, look, if I give a preteen an iPhone, then they're going to want Instagram. And if I give them Instagram, then they're going to want Snapchat. And it's just going to keep going. She was laughing and rolling her eyes. And I'm like, listen, we're not doing all this. It is a never ending loop with these children because they're testing the boundaries of where it really is. Is it really here? Is it, you know what I mean?
But here's the hard part. And I mean this. So you're trying to follow these rules, which are the right rules, to give your child the kind of life that they deserve to have. And if you don't give them these tools, you have failed. But they go to school or they go to swimming or whatever, and Susie next door, whose parents are those parents, has a new iPhone, has a new iPad. And there's where your problem comes in. Like I told y'all before, Milner, when she was 5, my child, who's now 33, came in and said, when are we getting an airplane? And I said, wow, well, we might ride on an airplane. And she said, well, my 3 best friends all have an airplane. And guess what? They did. I was like, I said, well, honey, that's just not in our budget. You know, we will fly on an airplane, but we probably will never own one. You know what? She was okay. I explained it to her. I said, we can't afford that. How about that?
And we do take that for granted that like kids have the complexities going on that our fully developed frontal lobe brains have, but they don't. I mean, if
They don't.
Great
They
answer. It's like, okay. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I think they're looking to you for reassurance. Like, you were totally fine that you didn't have an airplane, you know, like, and they took that cue from you, like, oh, well, that's fine then, you know. And also, I just love that you're giving us permission to like step into our children's lives like this. I know just as a mom, sometimes like hearing you say that, it's like, you're right. Like, I absolutely can say that, and I'm going to say that. And I really do try to live that way already. I have one child that's the most persistent child in the world, so it's just a constant, you know, you have to give those boundaries every day. But I love hearing you say it because it just gives me.
Well, think about my friend Virginia and the Rotten Tomato. I mean, this woman's husband was head of the French National Bank, and she was saying to her son, I remember one day I was at their house in London, and he said, I want to say whatever, and she said, she started singing, you can't always get what you want, and she started doing this dance. That's how she raised her children. Guess what? They're all 4 incredibly successful. They still don't know how much money their parents have. I guarantee you they don't. They know that they have money. They have no idea because that isn't what they were about. And if, Emily, you decided to just bow down and not teach your child who's pushing you, because children push, you have failed. She hasn't failed. You have failed. So I'm proud of you. You're not her friend. You're her friendly parent. And you better start kicking some butt because she's going to be gone in 4 years.
When she was little, she told me, you are not my best friend. And I was like,
there you go.
I am absolutely not.
But I didn't have that other line.
You said, and I don't want to be either. Thanks, sister.
Use the
But
friend.
anyway. All right. I can mow on, or y'all can
Go on. We're ready.
Well, y'all can ask me some questions because I'm going to tell you something. I want to pick out the thing I want to tell you the most. Okay, so let's get back to a structured, positive home. Well, first of all, like I said before, you got to get your act together. But once you get your act together, and look, if you need help getting your act together, I am here. I am free. Now, you get what you pay for, but I am free because I don't need the money anymore. And there was a huge time in our lives that we did need the money. And thank heaven I got it about a budget, because my husband never had one. He still didn't have time to look at the bills. I'm in charge. So that's the prerequisite to this. But if your home is scary and your bills are piling up, you better get some help, and you better get it fast, because you think your children aren't soaking up what they're seeing. Oh my word. They're soaking up the positives, but they're also soaking up every negative that's in there. And my children's friends, yes, they were very wealthy. One of Rhett's friends that he grew up with just bought a Bentley. I mean, you know, and he's talking to me about it as a 37-year-old, and we're still talking about the same things. Well, what's important? Do you have your act together? Blah, blah, blah. But that's because he grew up with those tools. And I keep saying that, but John Corll wrote a great book about packing your children's suitcase before they leave to go to college. And as the years go on, okay, so here's your suitcase. As the years go on, you got this much room once they're in high school. But you still have a little room. But if you haven't done that work before, you're going to have a hard time cramming this into that little inch. And when they leave, they're taking that suitcase with them. And that's what you have given them to prepare them. And if it's not full of great stuff, you have failed. You've got to go back and set this straight, just like the guy with the daughter and the iPad. He set it straight, and she will benefit from it. She may not like him right now. Who cares? You're not a friend. You're a friendly parent. Get your home straight.
What if you are the person that probably should be, you're hearing all of this and the light bulbs are going off and you feel empowered and you're doing the financial minimalism course and things are going very well. And your husband is not healthy with money.
That's a problem.
Right. Like if one parent is, one parent's not, kids are watching,
that's the problem. It's not even about money then, it's about relationships. And at that point, you and your husband, or your husband and the spendthrift wife, have got to get some help. Financial, and come see me. I will kick your rear end around the block as far as your marriage, and you've got to be on the same page. Look, nobody told you to have a child. That was something you decided on. And most people, my children are infertility people. I'm so thankful to have them. But with that baby's life came a real responsibility. And if one of those partners doesn't see it, that's got to be straightened out, because once somebody sees, oh my word, I'm hurting my child. I love my child. I'm hurting them. I think they will change. But it may take someone else to tell them that. In fact, a lot of times they're not going to hear it from you.
Yeah. And I do think that hurting, it kind of being reframed, because a lot of what you hear in this kind of like group affluent culture is like, I'll be hurting my child if she doesn't have the Tory Burch shoes in the 7th grade, or whatever the cool thing is. That's what you hear is like, I've had people, we were talking about school uniforms one day, and I had a mother look me straight in the face and she said, if Tory Burch flats will help my daughter get through middle school, then she's going to have a pair. And I was like shocked, but at the same time, it was good for me to hear, because that is our culture and that is part of what is going on, and part of what my children will also be listening to as I'm trying to parent and navigate through.
And that's the competition they're up against. But I'm going to tell y'all something, and I don't want you to hear it like Helen Owen thinks she's really something. But this is what happened. My house was a positive. It wasn't the biggest house. We didn't have a plane, but we had everything we needed, and most of what we wanted, even back then when we were struggling and fighting in these two businesses, real estate and then corporate ladder, which I've told you all about. Do you know whose house everybody wanted to come to? Take a guess. It was my house, because I treated their friends like that. I would love them, but I would discipline them. They wouldn't have gotten out of line at my house for love or money, because I got it that I am not their friend. I'm a friendly parent. And until you get that. So, and to this day, I run into their friends and, oh, Ms. Owens, I loved coming. Your house was always so great and fun. It wasn't the biggest, but there was a lot of love here and a lot of rules. But the rules were friendly rules. And so I'm telling you, okay, here's a great analogy. Put a bunch of kids in a playground, right? There's a center swing around thing. You have fences around the playground. As long as there's a fence, those children will play all the way to the edge of the fence. And this is proven. If you take the fence out, in other words, no rules, no parameters, you know where they go? They cling to the middle, because they don't know the rules and you haven't taught them. And I hate to be so harsh, but it's true. It's all on you if you're the parent. And I cannot tell you the people that I know and actually love, some of them friends of Milners and Rats, that they fell off. Some of them extremely wealthy. They have fallen off the way. They have addictions. I don't think they were ever told, listen, pal, this is where it stops. And you're going to get out and do some yard work if you want me to even talk to you about what Tory Burch shoes for a child. I'm not discussing. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Well, let's just have another thing that just happened in our house. We're really on the fast track now with all this stuff with our 11-year-old, but she wanted to do competitive dance, which is very expensive. And
it's crazy.
It's crazy. And so
I heard this.
So we were like sitting there, Andrew and I, and it's like, we really didn't want to do it anyway. And I'm not a very good dance mom. I don't know if y'all can pick that up for me automatically, but I am not good at that. And anyway, I just said, you know, Lily, like, if this is something that you want to do, like, we're going to help you out, but like, you got to drop this. I mean, we took everything else, like anything that she could think about doing. And she was like, I still want to do it. Well, that was good because she made a decision, but then it was also good because it kind of supplemented all the other stuff she's doing that's now out the window and hopefully will be more streamlined. But that's the kind of stuff I think that's also helpful, is helping your kid make choices. I don't know what you think about that, but you know, she had to prioritize. She had to be.
I think that's a great decision, Lauren. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Okay, so you asked her to make some decisions to make it possible for her to do this expensive thing.
Mhm.
Clear it all out. If this is really what you want, we will support you in it. But we can't do all this other. Why? Because we can't afford it. Even if you can afford it.
Right.
That's not reasonable. So she wanted it that badly, and you helped her to learn a great lesson, which is it doesn't all come easily. There are sacrifices to be made, and it's not that you're not going to get something great in your life. I've gotten many great things, but I always understood that wasn't just the accepted thing. I mean, I had to get out and work my rear end off, and so did Dickie. And now we're in a very comfortable place, but I think that was the right decision. And I've done that with Milner and Red about, you know, years in Europe and all that kind of stuff. They had to make some decisions. And then Dickie and I, they wanted it. They were going to help. And I don't see that your baby shouldn't be doing a few chores for that. And you're teaching her a great lesson.
Yeah, and there's I have another friend whose daughter wanted to go to a more extended camp. The family had signed her up for 1 week. She wanted to go to 2 week, and her mama said, "Hey, listen, we can afford 1 week camp. We cannot afford 2 week camp. So if you're gonna have to, if you want to pay for the 2 week, and even if you like, I think that's a great point, Helen. Even if you can't afford it, it's still just teach them to contribute to things that will help them reach their goals, dreams, whatever it is, and teach some financial responsibility in the process."
And remember, once they're in college, they're always your people. My people are my babies still, and they're ancient. They're grown, way grown, and have children of their own. But you are responsible to make them not that person, not the person that thinks it's always coming their way. I'm telling you, remember the spoiled rotten tomato. That's what you're doing. You think you're giving them something. What you're doing is hurting them. And once your vision turns like that and you realize, I've got to do this because I am responsible. So back to the woman who said, you know, we can't really afford it, and maybe you can contribute. Everything big, when my children got cars, I told them, you got to have $3,000 when they were 12 to put in my hand before Daddy and I will talk to you about a car. They both did that through birthday money. They worked, blah, blah, blah. They handed us the $3,000, and of course we didn't take it. We didn't have to. We said, okay, thank you. We have found this used, whatever we got, and it's for your birthday. But we're taking this money that you earned, and we're putting it in your college account. So we didn't take the money. Milner always said, I wanted a piano, and y'all made me work for it, and then you paid for the piano. I said, but we put the money you earned in your savings account. Well, oh boy, she got that. There's generosity in our home, but there are also rules. And if you don't set the rules and be consistent about it, there's a huge word. You can't give in one time and do it the other time, because then they're going to the bottom rung. They're going to know you can give in. You've got to set those. So once you do, just remember, when it's getting really hard, what if she marries a missionary? What if he marries somebody from a trailer park? I'm making this up, but, and forget it. I think they're fabulous people. I have a friend that was raised in a patriarch. I shouldn't have said that, but.
What is a good, gracious thing to say? Because we're living in the Southeast, some of us. You're sitting there and you're not going to buy your 16 or your 13 or 16-year-old the Tory Burch shoes. And the mom is like, well, why aren't you buying Mary Jane those shoes, Lauren? You've got plenty of money, or something like that. That could happen. Were you ever in that situation? Like you were kind of holding out and on purpose, and people around you were questioning you about it?
Actually, Rhett tells the story all the time that he wanted a Schwinn bike when he was, I think, 6th grade. And the Schwinns were $600 then, but then just a nice bike was $300. And we told him, we don't want you to be disappointed, but we're not going to do the Schwinn. And so he was disappointed. Well, why? Why? That's what I really want. Okay, well, if you really want that, then you are going to have to help earn it. Well, it was too close to his birthday. And it was one of those times I really got it. You know, sometimes you might do that really wild and out there thing because you are a generous, loving family. And there are wonderful things that come your way. And he says, I was ready and waiting for just kind of the nice bite. And I remember that you and Daddy got me the Schwinn. But with the Schwinn, I said, I want you to know that this was much more expensive. So picture the Tory Burch. This was much more expensive than what we thought was really necessary. But it's your birthday, and we adore you. And every now and then, things do work out like this. Mm-hmm. So happy birthday. He's never forgotten it.
That's
yeah.
cool.
And we didn't do that very often. Milner spending a year in France, that was one of those. But they knew that if we did that, one, we could afford it, but two, that there was a lesson to be learned in that.
That's a good word.
And it was valuable.
Well, can you, so it's 30 minutes in. So if you have a question, pop it in the chat really quickly. But while we're waiting, there were people that joined the call after you started, and you started with the Rotten Tomato story, and it's such a good one. And if you could just end with that too, because we just can't hear it enough. We need you on our shoulder next time we're in one of these situations, you know?
Well, this is how powerful that was. I was living in England, and Milner was a newborn. And that's how powerful, all these years later, I think of it all the time. So here it is. This is you picturing teaching your children. And it came from a great friend of mine. She said, and I said, how are you doing this? You're the wealthiest person I've ever known. And I keep saying her husband was head of the French National Bank. And they didn't believe in toys. They had 4 children. They didn't believe in a lot of stuff. They had one television in this huge London house. They just didn't believe in that. And she said, well, have you ever pictured a rotten tomato? And I said, actually, I have. They're disgusting. She said, no, really picture it in your mind. It's this red thing. It's got white foam, black in it. It's slimy. I said, yeah. And she said, that is what you are doing to your child. If you continue to give them everything, if you don't teach them the parameters, if you don't hold back, she said, I don't believe in it, and I will not do it because I picture that in my mind. I'm not going to hurt my child like that by spoiling them. And that is what it is, it's spoiling. And I thought it all the way through my children growing up, and I saw the antithesis of that in friends of mine who didn't get it. And they didn't ask me for my opinion, so I didn't say it, but it's just terrible. Yeah. So remember, the rotten tomato, you give in and you're constantly weak with money and you don't have a stance. You got to be running this show. You're not just you're in charge. Mm-hmm. Don't do that to your people.
Yeah, because I think just as a single parent, for me, it's all on me. And sometimes I wish I had a heavy so I wasn't always the heavy, but just a renewed, encouragement to continue on, because sometimes that path is harder than to just give them whatever they want. And so, but not only that, just to realize that it's so much bigger than just money. It's so much
I was gonna say, if you have money, still don't do it.
Their relationships, it's how they view themselves in their first job, it's how they get to each next step in their lives, and how they view themselves in this world, that they're not the center of it, and that they're not entitled. And so I just love that. So thank you.
To end this, so let's say the child with the Tory Burch gets married to a man who's going to be an attorney, but he doesn't have any family money, and he's got to start at the bottom. Eventually, hopefully he'll do well, and hopefully she'll do something. But she comes into that marriage saying, well, I wanted some Tory Burches for my birthday. And he's looking at her like, you're an idiot. Or he gives in and the marriage starts to crack.
Yes.
It starts to crack.
That's a good
I hope y'all heard this without, I was trying to be nice.
No,
You were very nice
you were so
about it.
good. All right. Well, Helen is a regular guest on the Wealth Edit. We're so grateful to have her. And you can reach out to her directly, and we have her contact information. We'll post it on the Wealth Edit. It should already be in our membership community because we did it last time, but we'll do it again. Tomorrow we have our open wealth circle. It's at 4:30 Central Time, and we're going to be talking about how to give. There's a lot of people that want to know about how to charitably contribute right now based on lots of factors that are happening in the United States. And so we want to help you with some of the things we've learned over the years. So if you're here at 4:30, we'll send a reminder tomorrow, but hope you'll join us. Helen, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Y'all are welcome. Please have me back. I have tons to say.
Oh, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Y'all are
Thanks.
sweet.
Bye.
Bye.
Love y'all.